Alright, the brand new second season of Clone High just dropped, and some people are very disappointed. Hell, some people were very disappointed after the first episode. Some people were disappointed after the trailer, and some were just disappointed by the concept of another revival series. So it wasn't the best reception all around. The first season of Clone High is some of my favorite content ever, with a unique style of humor and an insanely interesting concept. So, is this new season a startling disappointment that left me devastated and yearning for the good old days? No. It feels mostly the same as Season 1, which is a huge compliment. In fact, I think it may even be a little bit better. So, let's get into it. And right off the bat, you may rightly be saying, how can it feel the same? They kicked Gandhi out of the show. And look, I liked Gandhi a lot in Season 1, but I didn't really feel his absence too strongly, or at least in a negative way. He's a large personality, and honestly, he often is the center of quite a few dumb jokes or storylines that kind of grind things to a halt. But of course, he also has some of the best jokes in the whole show, making him a real hit or miss character. And while I miss the hits, I think the new characters make up for it, and I don't miss the misses. Did that make sense? Yeah, I think I'm good. I'm open to him returning for Season 3, but I'm also fine if he doesn't. Of course, by replacing Gandhi with 3 or I guess 4 new characters, the show can feel a little full at times, with Abe and especially Cleo seeing less screen time. However, I feel like the writers did a pretty good job balancing this. I never felt like one character was really taking up too much of the show's time, in large part due to the fact that their interactions worked so well. One of my favorite parts of any episode this season was when Confucius was just hanging out with JFK and teaching him about the internet. Either one of them really dominates the scene, but we come away liking both of them, especially Confucius, a little more. Something that I also want to praise the show for is following up on what I thought made the character additions interesting in the first place. The main characters being clones of historical figures is just such an interesting and rich concept that I had always hoped the show would explore the more emotional side of these characters and how they felt about their situation. However, besides like one line from Gandhi in that episode about conflict resolution for Abe, I never really got that in Season 1. And although the second season still doesn't have a ton of it, we do see how Harriet deals with the pressure of living up to her predecessor and doing something great with her life. She often puts her goals ahead of her personal relationships, only to realize at the end of the season that this isn't how she wants to live her life, even if she can obtain her dreams this way. And Topher, man, I thought the concept of a clone whose predecessor is cancelled, in Topher's words for being a jerk, is just such a cool concept, and it delivers despite Topher's limited screen time. The dude handles it by changing his name, then diving deep into being 100% woke despite not meaning any of it and still being kind of the worst. He's a very small person trying to pretend that he's not one, which is pretty entertaining. Finally, I don't have a ton to say about Frida or Confucius, except that I like both of them, and I think they can flesh out Harriet and Cleo more through their relationships. But the main change that works for me, although it's not a large one, is in JFK's character. I think the writers realized how much the audience loved him during the, let's call it a hiatus, and he has a much larger, much deeper role as a result. Just how much he cares for Joan is really nice to see, and it serves as a great character progression from Season 1, where although he did like Joan, he was still mostly just hitting on her. Originally, the creators said that they were planning on having JFK cheat on Joan in the second season, and have them break up because of that, and although that does happen here, it's weird to think about, he's mostly honest about it, and they're able to work through it. Instead, the show handled their breakup much better, with both of them realizing that although they still care for each other, they're just not that compatible on an intellectual level. It's more realistic, and it keeps us liking both of them instead of just throwing JFK's character under the bus. They even remain friends after their breakup, with JFK even trying to set her up with Lincoln. JFK's just the best man, and I'm so glad he got the all-star treatment this season because he absolutely deserves it. Next up, I think out of everything in this show, Principal Scudworth and Mr. B feel like the most intact part of Season 1. They never really skipped a beat, which, thank God, I love them, and this is especially impressive with the new addition of the Superintendent. And yeah, she's fine. I think she just gives someone for the Scud Man and Mr. B to bounce off of. Plus, she can serve as a more immediate threat than the Board of Shadowy Figures ever could. Look, I didn't love everything about this season. Far from it, actually. I think they're just a tad too hard on Abe, and the first episode really drags, focusing mainly on how it's now 2023. That's by far the least interesting part to me. I would have been fine if not for the new clones if they just kept in the past. But there are plenty parts of Season 1 that I didn't really care for either. Gandhi's ADD plotline, the one where Joan goes crazy because she's hearing voices, and really the entire Raisins episode. And I bring these up not to try and drag that first season down. It's one of my favorite seasons of a show ever. But I feel like with these new revivals that we keep getting, there's a really strong tendency to let nostalgia cloud our judgment and lead us to unnecessarily hating anything new. I only watched the first season for the first time about a year ago, so I like to think I'm free of this, at least on this one specific show. And this, at least to me, feels like the same zany, always entertaining Clone High. That's how the theme song goes, right? At least to a point. After all, the animation is much smoother and there are new characters, but even then, it's not really worse. So I'm asking you, please just give this season a fair shake. Try to allow yourself to enjoy it, because if you go into it thinking that nothing could ever top the original and that this will be crap, it probably will be. I think that in a big way, we at least partially control how much fun we have with a piece of media. Maybe not whether we really like it or enjoy it, but at least somewhat. And if you're watching something you've already decided to hate, then what are you doing? You're just wasting your time. Thank you. Yeah, so Clone High Season 2, very good. This is number score.